welcome to Midday Report here on TVP World. My name is Marie Cato. Our top story this hour, the passenger jet crash in India's western city of Ahmedabad, where authorities now say that all of the 242 people on board have been killed. The London-bound Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner came down just moments after takeoff in a ball of flames just beyond the airport perimeter. Rescue workers say more than 100 bodies have been recovered from the site so far, but that figure is expected to rise. The plane struck a residential block used by medics, with the explosion hurling wreckage from the jet across the area and causing widespread damage. Video of the scene showed twisted metal fragments burning homes and thick plumes of black smoke billowing into the sky. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said on X that the Ahmedabad tragedy is heartbreaking. Modi said his thoughts are with everyone affected. The accident happened around 4 hours ago, just after 1:30 p.m. local time. The pilots issued a mayday call signaling an emergency, but that was their last known contact. The Flight Radar 24 tracking website said it received the last position signal from the aircraft as it reached an altitude of 190 meters seconds after it took off. Air India says the 242 people on board included 217 adults and 11 children. Of these, 169 were Indian nationals, 53 were Britons, 7 Portuguese and 1 Canadian. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the scenes of Air India crash were devastating. The GLOBSEC Forum 2025 gathers policymakers, politicians and industry representatives to discuss the most pressing issues facing Europe's defense industry. It comes just a few weeks ahead of the NATO summit in The Hague, which aims to increase defense budgets, close capability gaps and address the ongoing war in Ukraine. Our defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek is in Prague and has more.
The GLOBSEC Forum is currently underway in Prague, where policymakers, industry representatives as well as politicians have gathered to discuss some of the most pressing issues currently facing European space and defense sectors. Amongst the most notable speakers was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who delivered his keynote address earlier today, in which he underlined that European allies will need to boost their drone production capabilities akin to what Ukraine has already done before delivering a stark criticism of Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, on what he calls using human shields in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Now, the GLOBSEC Forum comes just a couple of weeks before the NATO summit at The Hague, where the NATO allies will gather to discuss boosting defense spending and agreeing on new defense limits. This is set to become 5% starting from June. Additionally, some of the guests today also underlined that some of the capability challenges which have been identified in the years gone by will also need to be addressed in the ongoing efforts of the NATO alliance. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
And now moving on to Ukraine and the effects on Russia's continued aggression. 14 people, including 4 children, have been wounded in Russia's latest attack on Kharkiv. According to the city's mayor, Ihor Terekhov, the strike targeted residential buildings, schools, kindergartens and civilian infrastructure.
Terekhov stated that Russia flew 12 drones on Kharkiv, 11 of which detonated in the city. The one unexploded UAV was found by Ukrainian authorities after landing on a roof of a warehouse. The attack damaged a school, kindergarten, and several residential buildings in several districts of the city. As a result of the drone strike, cars, schools, and houses caught fire. The attack on Kharkiv came just a day after a previous Russian drone strike on the city, which killed 3 people and injured at least 64 others.
German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has arrived in Kyiv to meet with Ukrainian leaders. Their meetings will center around additional military aid and the current situation in Ukraine.
The announcement of the German minister's arrival was made public on social media by the German press agency dpa. Before his trip, Pistorius said his main objective is to find out more about the current situation on the Ukrainian front lines and in the cities. He also added he's hoping to speak to government officials about coordinating continued cooperation between Berlin and Kyiv, specifically matters detailing Germany providing Ukraine with crucial military aid as the country fights off intensifying Russian aggression.
NATO will be expanding its satellite surveillance capabilities to monitor Ukraine and the eastern flank of the bloc. This is according to Senior Commander Admiral Pierre Vandière in an interview for Bloomberg. In the interview, Admiral Vandière said that today we're not certain the Russians will stop at Ukraine. That's why, to bolster surveillance, NATO aims to launch an initiative called Smart Indication and Warning Broad Area Detection. It will incorporate AI-augmented analysis that will help detect changes by providing superior image and data. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Odessa. This meeting is a show of support from the Balkan country that has been walking a tightrope between Russia and the European Union for years now. It can also be seen as a nod to Belgrade's European partners.
Aleksandar Vučić, the president of Serbia, has paid his first visit to Ukraine since the Russian full-scale invasion began in 2022. While in the country, he attended the Ukraine-Southeast Europe summit in Odessa, a city ravaged by the ongoing conflict. This visit is seen as a sign of support for war-torn Ukraine, however vaguely worded a statement by the Serbian president might have been.
Serbia will always remain very faithful to UN Charter, international public law, which includes our support to territorial integrity to UN-recognized countries.
While at the summit, Vučić did not sign a declaration condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine. His unwillingness to approve such a declaration, despite showing up for the summit, is another part of the balancing act that Serbia's been playing between East and West for many years now.
Yeah, it's a complicated story, relationships between Ukraine and Serbia. Yes, in Serbia there are many people who are very pro-Russian, I would say.
Vučić paying a visit to Ukraine comes just 1 month after he attended the Victory Day parade in Moscow. But his show of support to Ukraine now is perceived as a positive sign by some.
It's not something that Putin would like, but still Putin would not like this, but Vučić is here.
And this is not the first time in recent days that Moscow could be dissatisfied with Serbia. 2 weeks ago, a report by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service was revealed, mentioning Serbian companies funneling arms to Ukraine via third-party countries like Bulgaria, the Czech Republic and Poland.
The European Commission says it welcomes Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić's surprise visit to Ukraine on Wednesday. While the spokesperson for the EU executive couldn't expand on how this could impact accession talks, many see the president's excursion as a way to counteract a controversial visit to Moscow. We are joined live by our EU correspondent Angela Skujins from Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. How do these trips play out in the arena of Belgrade's EU accession talks?
Yes, that is an excellent question. Also the question that TVP World put the European Commission spokesperson's service at a press conference today, almost 24 hours after news broke that Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić touched down in Odessa for that summit. A surprise trip for many in the Belgian capital, as well as across Europe more broadly. And while the European Commission couldn't expand on how this visit perhaps counteracts that other trip to Moscow for the May 9th military parade, they did state that they welcomed the excursion. Let's take a listen to that statement in full.
The EU encourages acceding countries to stand united with us in our policies toward the Russian aggression against Ukraine. As the President of the Commission said, our objective is very clear. We are reiterating the call for a full unconditional ceasefire of at least 30 days. This pause in hostilities could serve as a vital step towards reducing civilian suffering and allow space for meaningful talks for a genuine peace.
Yes, so as we heard at the top of that report just prior to this one, Belgrade is playing out a delicate balancing act with that Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić, balancing the needs of his constituents, as Serbia has been in the throes of EU accession talks since 2009, as well as balancing of the needs of Red Square, his ally, bedfellow Russian President Vladimir Putin. But we know that these accession talks will continue. The The next time will be at a General Affairs Council at the end of June, perhaps early July. But we know in the run-up to his visit to Moscow, the European Commission was firm, stating that any leader from any EU accession country, particularly those Western Balkans, would face serious consequences if they were in attendance. We heard even stronger commentary coming out of the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Kaja Kallas, stating this would exempt a country from those accession talks. But we'll have to wait and see how this pans out at those discussions among EU affairs ministers, and perhaps if Vučić has another surprise trip up his sleeve. But that's all from Brussels. I'll send it back to you in Warsaw.
Many thanks, Angela Skujins, updating us directly from Brussels. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni spoke with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Rome today. The meeting is a part of the Weimar Plus summit that is currently being hosted in Italy. Foreign ministers from Poland, Germany, Britain, France, Italy and Spain, along with NATO Secretary General and the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, are attending the Weimar Plus summit today. The ministers will hold a joint press conference later in the afternoon. The focus of the discussions is transatlantic security and further support for Ukraine. Today's summit is the sixth one under the Weimar Plus format, which was first launched in Warsaw, Poland in November 2024. The European Union could move ahead with imposing lower price caps on Russian oil without US support, said EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas. She also said that the new 18th package of sanctions will include more restrictions on energy, banking, and will hit supply chains Russia requires to continue the war.
It is important, of course, what we do together, but it's also equally important for us what we do alone, because we alone are also a player. If you think about the oil going through the channels, it's mostly, I mean, Europe. It's via the Baltic Sea, it's via the Black Sea. So actually, you know, even if the Americans are not on board, we can still do it and have an impact. Now the sanctions will hit more the supply chains of Russia needed to really fund this war. On the 18th package, we also have the banking, transaction ban and much stronger steps.
Russia's projected budget deficit for this year has tripled. In 2025, it is expected to reach 3.8 trillion rubles, an equivalent of $48 billion US. This threefold increase is chiefly attributed to two factors: falling global prices of oil, as well as Western sanctions imposed on Moscow. The data comes from Władysław Wlasiuk, the Ukrainian presidential representative on sanctions policy. According to Wlasiuk, the combination of cheap oil and a strengthening ruble has led to a nearly 25% drop in oil and gas revenues for the Kremlin. The International Atomic Energy Agency, an intergovernmental watchdog, has established that Iran failed to meet its non-proliferation nuclear obligations for the first time in 20 years. The agency is considering a possible referral to the UN Security Council regarding the matter. The watchdog cites a general lack of cooperation from Tehran as a cause for concern. Secret activities and undeclared nuclear material have also sparked worries. Iran's foreign minister warned European leaders that any support of this move would be a mistake, warranting a strong reaction from Tehran. This escalation of tensions comes as the United States advised some Americans to leave the region, including staff at the American embassy in Iraq, following reports on Israeli military readiness to strike Iranian nuclear sites. And this concludes Midday Report here on TVP World. Many thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for more on our channel. Goodbye.